Hi, it's Michael, and I'm going to get someone to actually show you all about SEO, well, at least a startup guide, so you get an understanding of what search engine optimization is, why it's important, and why it can actually make a massive difference to all of your offers and especially all of your websites. If you don't know what SEO is, then you're in the right place. It stands for search engine optimization. And what it is basically, no matter which search engine you use, a search engine are the likes of Google, Yahoo, Safari, and so on and so forth. There's lots and lots of search engines. What these search engines do, they have various crawlers and algorithms that come across the search engine looking for what actually your website actually has attached to it, whether it's a popular website or not, which is why you have to have all the best content possible on your website. If you have the best original daily content, then when these algorithms come across your site, which they troll the internet all of the time when they come across your site, if you have up-to-date daily content going up constantly all of the time, then it is a much, much greater chance, especially with the likes of Yahoo and Google, to actually rank a great deal higher. But that is the very, very tip of the iceberg. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Neil Patel just to talk about a few different things to do with how you start up with SEO, what it's all about, and what factors are really, really important for you. So we'll get Neil to do that for you right now.
Before we get started into going over SEO, there's a few things I wanted to cover. There's a lot of people saying false information out there, so I wanted to play a little fun little game called Fact or Fiction. The first one, my industry is too hard to get ranked in. Second one, only big companies can do well on Google. Then I always hear, the more pages I have, the better. Then people always say, I need to submit my site to Google, or I need to spend money to win online. Now let's go over all 5 of them. The first one, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, you can always rank on Google. Some industries take longer than others, but you can still rank on Google. And if it was only big companies that ranked well on Google, you wouldn't see all these small mom pops popping up doing well and changing their lives. Also, more pages you have, the better. That's totally false. If you look at about.com, they cut more than half their content. They turned it into a lot of mini sites and they started getting more traffic. And Google, it detects your site automatically. You don't need to quote unquote manually submit it. Now, of course, creating an account on Google Search Console and submitting your sitemap isn't a bad thing to do. And you don't need to spend a ton of money to win online. And that's why I started to get into SEO. Now, by the end of this presentation, you'll understand the factors that are really important to Google if you want to rank high. And you'll also learn how SEO will help you drive traffic and, more importantly, sales. There are 3 main keys that you really need to understand if you want to win online. The first is, why is SEO so important? Look, SEO is a process of optimizing any given search word or term for a search engine on your site. In other words, it's your 24-hour salesman. So no matter what time of the day or what country people are in, when they're searching, you can be found, you're getting that traffic, and some of it will end up converting into sales. That's why I love SEO. If you stop paying money to Google or whatnot for paid ads, you know what? Your traffic dies down. But with SEO, if you don't do anything for a whole week straight, you don't even open up your wallet, you can still continually get traffic. During this presentation, I may end up using some terms that you may not be familiar with. So I want you to go to neilpatel.com/training and download the marketing acronym glossary. This will help you keep up with everything and understand what we're talking about. My 5 top reasons why I love SEO so much is it's simple. It increases your traffic. It generates a positive return on investment. It gives you amazing brand awareness. Over the years, so many people have found me from Google first. It builds a ton of trust. You know, what's funny is people are like, all right, it ranks in Google. I read it. It must be true. Now, that doesn't mean that you should put out deceiving information, but it's for you to understand that it builds trust. And your competition is doing it. So if you don't do it, you're going to get left out. The next key to winning online is choosing your battleground. As Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, says, if it isn't on Google, it doesn't exist. Your new best friend is Google. You know, when you're going out to the park and you're playing baseball, your new friend Google is going to be there. When you're on your couch watching TV with a friend, well, that friend is going to be Google. Now, I know they're not really going to be sitting next to you and Google can't really catch the ball for you, but that's how much in love you need to be with Google because they can change your life. They dominate search on all landscapes. So when you look at desktop, There are estimated 4.5 billion active internet users, and Google's search share for desktop is 87%. That's roughly 8.7 out of 10. That's an amazing result. Hey, if I was in school and I kept getting grades of 8.7 out of 10 or 87%, my mom would be happy. And on mobile, it's even more crazy. They're 9.5 out of 10. They dominate even a greater share because so many people are using Android devices. So if you're not on Google, you're not going to do well. And just being on there isn't enough. Your position is everything. Over 31.7% of people click on position 1 according to advanced web ranking. If you're not in the top 10, then you're not going to be seen at all. Being in the top is literally everything. At this point, what I want you to do is go to neilpatel.com/training and download the PDF on search engines. It'll help you understand how Google works, their layout, from the SERP features to advertising to page results to knowledge graph. It literally will break down all aspects of a search listing page. If you already know that, you don't really need to download it, but if you don't, it's a great place to start before we jump into the third key, which is unlocking the SEO factors to win online. One question that you may have in mind is, hey Neil, what information does Google offer in relation to SEO and ranking online? Well, they give some information, not a ton, but they do give some and we do appreciate it. They have guidelines, like they tell you to make sure that your website stands out from others or make sure that your pages are optimized for users and not search engines. But these little checklists and these little factors don't really tell you much. And yes, they tell you what not to do, but again, it's really generic and it doesn't tell you much. One thing that you can do is go to Uber Suggests, click on the site audit report in the left-hand navigation once you're there, and look at your website, and it'll break down the factors that Google is looking at, from what's healthy, what's having issues on your sites, to redirects, to warnings, to recommendations. You're going to want to go through all of them and make sure you fix them. And you want to do it for all the pages on your site, not just half your pages or a few of your pages. Google wants to rank sites that are fully optimized, not just one or two pages that are optimized. The other thing that's cool that they do is they have a Twitter account called Search Liaison, and they tweet about updates, what's happening. So I make sure, if I were you, I would follow it. Danny Sullivan also works at Google. I recommend following him as well. Those are two accounts that you can get a lot of information on what's happening with their algorithms. You can also look at Think with Google. It's a website that they ended up releasing. It gives you information and a lot of data points out there. You're probably wondering, hey Neil, this is all great, but what's the holy grail of SEO? What's that silver bullet? Well, there's not really a silver bullet. It's a lot of little things that add up, and I'm going to go over them. One of them is page speed. For every second delay means roughly 7% reduction in conversions, according to HubSpot. So you want to make sure your site loads fast. And on that same site audit report in Uber Suggests, it breaks down site speed and it tells you what's wrong and what needs to be fixed. The next thing I want you to look at is mobile user experience. Look, the number of people that are using mobile devices is continually going up, so much so that Google has a mobile first index. That's the power of mobile. The next factor that I want you to look at is topical content. They know that, hey, if you have pages on cats, then you may cover topics like kittens, what happens if your cat leaves you for a day or two, what kind of food does a cat eat, what's a healthy weight for a cat. So the more detail that you go into on each page around the same topic, the better you're going to end up ranking, versus if you go really broad and cover a lot of random topics, but you don't go in depth on all of them. Another factor, and this is from Ahrefs, it's all about URL length. The longer your URL length, the lower your rankings are. So you want to keep your URL short and to the point. Another thing to look at is content length. Generally speaking, the longer your content, the more social shares you're going to end up getting, the better you're going to end up doing. But that doesn't mean that you should just go out there and release a ton of long articles that contain fluff. If you have fluff in your articles, you won't do well. Backlinks is another big factor. And as you can see from this chart by Ahrefs, backlinks have more of an impact on your rankings than on-page SEO. That's getting other sites to link to you. It's super important. And one thing that very few SEOs look at is the power of brand and user signals. So the ex-CEO of Google once said, brands are the solution, not the problem. Brands are how you sort out the cesspool. Now, Matt Cutts, who also worked at Google in the past, he was a former head of web spam. He stated a quote saying, "We actually came up with a classifier to say, okay, IRS or Wikipedia or New York Times is over on this side and low quality sites are over on the other side." In these days, security is a big issue as well. So you want to make sure you're using an SSL certificate so that way you get that HTTPS, because when people go to your website and you're not using SSL, you're more likely to get a warning. Now, before I dive into the next lesson of keyword research, I want to go over some cool things that you should do to get started. The first is to go to Ubersuggest and head to the dashboard and create your project. This will help you track your rankings over time and your progress so you can see if you're doing better or worse. And of course, you should be doing better. I already went over the fact and fiction. Now you know what is real and what isn't. Now it's time for you to go to neilpatel.com/training and download these 3 things. They're super important. Google Search Packs, local landing page, local directory checklist. This is all important because it'll help set up the right foundation before we dive into keyword research. Thank you, and I look forward to helping you get loved by Google.